All right, man. Sammy, how's it going?
Sharia, what's up, brother?
How's life?
Surviving, hanging in there. Just
Good.
trying to make it through this this little November window.
Yeah, a busy time of year.
Definitely.
How would you outline some of the shit you got going on?
Well, I mean, I love to take my CS classes, so it's just CS on CS on CS.
When do you think it really got difficult for you? Like, did you find freshman year hard, or like, did it start to pick up? Like, what one in the time frame?
I found parts of freshman year hard for sure. I mean, it's been a minute, but so freshman fall was like pretty fun because some of the classes I'd already taken before in high school, so I was kind of just going back and
You were
doing
taking
them.
183 at the time, or?
No, I was taking Engine 101
I
because that's
see.
the 183
Yeah.
equivalent.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I was taking some like math that I'd already done, but the advisor wanted me to redo it, so I was like, sure. Freshman fall was pretty chill. I was just helping other people out with the class. But then freshman winter, I was completely messing up one of my classes. So
Which one?
I was EX 203. So that was kind of a tragedy, but
Yeah.
that's how it is. And then I was gaming a lot back then. So
Okay. You still do that or no?
not as much, at least not at school.
Yeah.
But sometimes at home I'll like to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think when you decided to shorten the amount of time you play, it was mainly for school-related reasons, or?
Mostly for school related reasons. Some of it became like life and things I actually like to do related reasons.
I see.
I also don't have like a nice machine here. I just have my laptop. So
Yeah. Interesting. So was there like a moment in time where things started to shift where like I shouldn't be doing this as much, or it was like just like how did you decide that one day like let's
Ooh.
get out of this?
Okay. Well, I'm trying to think about what the moment was because I was still playing in like sophomore fall, and then sophomore winter I might have taken a break probably because like there was some of the people I was playing with had some like weird drama. I don't know. I
Like at a
forget
social
all
level
that.
or what?
Yeah. Because we would always like do the multiplayer activities together, stuff
Yeah.
like that. So that kind of made it fall off. But also probably when I started getting into lifting, I realized like I don't need to do this.
Is that like you said freshman year or sophomore year? I forgot.
Sophomore fall is when I got
Sophomore
into
fall.
lifting.
And that's when it kind of hit you that you started lifting and it naturally kind of went away because of the social related reasons and I guess
Social
with time-
reasons, making time to do class reasons, all those kind of things. Lots
Interesting.
of positive changes.
So you started lifting sophomore year of college.
Yeah.
What was that
sophomore
like?
fall. It was kind of weird because I had just started lifting, and most of these guys in the Michigan college gym are like they've been lifting since freshman year of high school, maybe earlier. So that was like a weird adjustment for me, but it was great because I would just go with one of my friends, and then after a few weeks it was locked in. Nothing was changing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think everyone kind of starts at a different time, but with time, everyone kind of gets to the same playing field. Like after about a year or two, like everyone's kind of just right there. Right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cool.
After my year, my like newbie gains, that was when most of the recomposition happened.
Yeah.
So I looked like a totally different person, but I looked like most people around me.
Were you still like pretty big at the time, like jack wise, or did you start skinny or fat, or how did you start?
I started fat. I started
Okay.
pretty fat. I was like 235, pretty much no muscle. So that completely changed.
Wow. Well, how did your like outlook on life change after that?
Ooh. I'd always tried to maintain a positive outlook, but it became way easier to maintain it after that because I had this outlet that kept me going every day. So it was just a way that I could introduce a routine to my life. And that this is a positive routine and something that I can always like progress in. Because there are some things that we do every day where there's not really like, there's no end goal, which is fine. We need to have those things.
Like what?
Well, like you wake up, you shower, you brush your teeth. There's not really an end goal to showering or brushing your teeth. You're just trying to keep the decay from happening. And you're trying to like stay clean.
Yeah.
But with lifting, right, or with any kind of exercise, there is some degree of progress you'll get from it.
Right.
So the end goal, I mean, could be to improve, or it could be similar to brushing, just, maintaining cleanliness.
Yeah, interesting. So you said it was more difficult for you to maintain a positive outlook after, or more easier?
It was easier, but I'd always tried to maintain a positive outlook even before.
I see.
Yeah.
It's funny because like the positive outlook has been a big theme on the podcast. Like these last 3 episodes, like with Brahm, we're talking. The whole episode was about positive outlook. Even yesterday, I was with my friend Noah Link, and we just talked about positive outlook. So it's just, this theme like always comes back. And I think the fundamental question is that it's so easy to say how you hold a positive outlook, like you just be happy or you just be grateful, yada yada yada. But the hardest thing is to implement it, and it's still a thing that I feel like. Okay, I did this podcast with Brahm, I learned so much. I did this podcast with Noah, I learned so much, and I implemented. But then I still find myself in these negative thought patterns. I still find myself either fed up or sometimes cynical or just like in a bad mood. And I don't know, like, what does it take to maintain a positive outlook? That's the hardest thing.
Ooh, that is a tough one. I definitely don't do it perfectly. I have my moments. Like, I don't think I'm maintaining a positive outlook on life right now with, with the job hunt, with some of the projects I'm behind on, things like that. So I kind of think that it's I guess depends on what you mean by maintain. What do you mean by maintain? Do you mean like forever, or do you mean for short periods at a time?
Well, I think it's more like, not to say you're happy all the time, because you will naturally feel the whole range of emotions as a part of life, but I guess you get better at responding to it in a way where, okay, like I felt this negative emotion, but I'm able to bounce back quickly.
Ooh. Okay. Definitely think Stoicism is applicable here.
Wow, yeah. Tell me about it.
So, well, I'm not an expert, but I know that one of the things that I really care about with Stoicism is learning to respond to the things that happen to you or to things that other people say to you instead of react, because it's natural to have the initial reaction. It's unavoidable, and I think that's okay. That's an okay thing. You're not going to be perfect. Reactions happen. Like, if someone tells me something that I don't like, or they give me some kind of feedback that I don't want to hear, I'm going to react poorly. But you take a second, and then you can make a real response instead of just some kind of like, oh, well, I don't want to fucking hear that.
How do you do that, though?
You got to slow down. I'm not perfect at it. When I'm arguing with some people, I can kind of like get a little out of my head, and then I'm no longer thinking about it. But that's definitely where it's applicable. And I think I'm trying to remember where we were with this, with how Stoicism is applicable. Maintaining a positive outlook.
Outlook, yeah.
Okay, outlook. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the way that applies, I think, is that you these things will happen. These bad things will happen that puts you in a bad thought pattern. But when you slow down and realize, okay, well, that's unfortunate. This kind of thing happened. It matters. But you can like reset yourself and realize that you're just viewing these things happening.
Like in third person.
Maybe. That could be one method. Without detaching yourself completely. Because it's still happening to you and it still matters to you. But now it's like, okay, well, what can I actually do to change the situation?
Right.
Instead of this is happening.
Do you think you've gotten better at it with time? Like, is Stoicism like something you've been working on in your life? Or like what
indirectly, I think.
Like, how is Stoicism connected to your life?
So the big connection for me is high EQ. I want to have really, really high EQ. I want to be as good as possible at specifically responding instead of reacting. Because I kind of come from a place.
Can you define high EQ in this context?
In this context, I might define it by mostly stuff that's just within you. So things that you can control, like how you respond to things people say,
right.
How you handle certain emotions you're experiencing. That's probably like what I would say for EQ. And then high EQ, just like being good at that type of thing. Got
you. Interesting. So when did you start reading about Stoicism? Was it through Andrew's Club, or were you interested in it before?
It was through Andrew's Club. I actually hadn't heard of Stoicism as its philosophical term until pretty much then.
Wow. Amazing. What are some of the coolest things you learned from the club? Or things that stuck with you?
Ooh, learned from the club. I'm not sure, actually. It's good to hear other people's opinions, because your own brain is kind of an echo chamber. So even if you philosophize kind of with yourself, it's nice to hear what other people have to say, because you start seeing these things in a whole new perspective. And I'm trying to think of specific examples, but it's kind of hard to come up with them.
So when you say the echo chamber, it's like, okay, you're trying to reach some kind of realization, but you have so much bias in your own brain. Is that what it means?
Yeah, it might be that you're trying to reach some realization. You have a bunch of bias in your own brain. It could be that you're trying to reach this realization, but you just need a new perspective. Because you might see something a certain way. Oftentimes I do this. I see like a solution to some kind of problem, maybe even like a homework problem, right? In a certain way. And so I'm not able to see the easier path to getting it. But, one of my friends who I might talk to for like 10 minutes is like, oh, you could try this out. And then it totally widens the perspective and opens up some possibility.
Wow. I mean, I think our human brains are really good at laser focusing. That's a strength of our brains. Like, we're so good at, when we want to solve one problem, like we can go so laser focused and deep into that one problem. But I think because of that, we just always create bubbles that we get stuck in.
Ooh, so how do you think those bubbles get created?
That's a good question, but it is the echo chamber, I think. It's like your environment, you see patterns in your environment, or you see patterns in the way you always do things, and you kind of register that in your brain as something that you generalize to the whole world in a way. That you've always been trained to approach a problem in this way. You've always been trained to achieve something in this way. And because of that, your brain has created the associations that in order to achieve X, I must do these things. And sometimes there are other ways to get to the same outcome, but you get so used to that like cycle of like, my brain has associated these things, that you kind of create this bubble in yourself where you're only limited to the limited experiences that you have.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm starting to get that.
I feel like it's very theoretical.
No, it makes a lot of sense because I think, so what I interpret from what you're saying is that, because of you've done some certain thing a certain way for some amount of time.
We should probably like give a specific example, otherwise no one's going to understand what the fuck we're talking about.
Actually true. Okay, solving like a word problem. Okay. Like an elementary school math word problem.
Okay, Bob has 3 pillows.
Yeah, exactly. Bob has 3 pillows. Betty wants 1. Right. So you could see the 3 minus 1 and say, okay, it's got to be 2, right? Like Bob has 2 pillows left and then Betty gets her 1. But maybe someone else, it's so contrived. It's hard to work with this problem. But like maybe someone else can see it as,
I don't know how we got here. We went really deep down this rabbit hole. That's interesting. But I think the best way to think about it is that I think this is why a lot of like people, when they go on retreats or just like step out of their environment, like they just see things in a different way. Like I was talking about this with Christian because he finds that playing jazz has made him a better data scientist, because we went in this like whole like 30-minute, 40-minute deep conversation about like types of intelligence and how there's everyone's brain is designed in a different way.
Okay.
Which is really crazy because we think that humans' brains almost be the same, but everyone's brain is fundamentally different in the way that their neurons are connected, which translates into what they're good at, right? Like some people are better with navigation, some people are better with patterns and tunes, and some people are better at like problem solving, and some people are better at creativity. And it's explained by the fact that our brains are all fundamentally different. And acquiring a skill that leverages a different skill set in your brain gets you better at seeing a broader perspective. And that's why you're saying that, okay, jazz requires a different mental skill set of pattern recognition versus data scientist requires this very technical problem solving thing. And because of that, like you might consciously not realize, it's not like jazz, he just thought of a jazz note and he saw the answer. It's more like his brain has added double the amount of connections. Okay. And because of that, he's able to approach the problem and like, see things that normal people don't see.
That's very compelling. I mean, so not only is he broadening his brain that way, and I've experienced a similar thing with some of the jazz studying I've done, but I actually think that there's a direct connection there between jazz and data science, because if we're saying here that jazz is about seeing these patterns and picking up on them, and then being able to like use your patterns to create your own ideas, then I mean data science, you look at this data, right? It might be a bunch of garbage. It might be completely unrelated to maybe the kind of business that you have. So you've collected all this data about these customers. And now it's like, okay, well, how can I make some kind of insight using this data? And then if you apply the jazz way of thinking, well, okay, there's a pattern here. So can we find the pattern in this data?
Yeah.
So it
I
could
see
be
that.
directly connected.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's also why like people who have those well-rounded lifestyles where they're like have a bit of everything in a way. Like sure, they might not be as good as one central thing, but I think it kind of makes them better at everything. Like I'd always think that when I have the most free time, I'll be the most successful in achieving goals. Like over the summer, so much free time. But then like the progress is so stagnant, and I'm like, at school I'll never have enough time because I'm trying to achieve 5 things at the same time. But the second I'm trying to achieve 5 things at the same time, I achieve all of them. And it's like I think that the things in one skill set translate to the other skill set, even if it's not the intelligence thing, but it's more just like you kind of enter this other bubble of like pursuit, and then it just translates to everything, which is like it's a weird thing about our brains how it works.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this idea of kind of being overloaded like a lot.
Yeah.
Because you have this goal, but when you give yourself a lot of work, then you have like 5 other goals that you need to be doing at the same time. And so because you know that the goal has to be done within a certain period of time, it's going to get done. But when you have 8 hours a day to do the goal, well, it's like, okay, I have 40 hours this week, so I can spend the other 30 hours doing nothing and then focus 10 hours just on the thing I need.
Right. So do you think it's would you rather in your ideal world have less goals or more goals in terms of like, okay, if you have less goals, you actually have a higher chance of achieving it because of no distractions? Or do you think like you're better off like trying to do a little bit of everything at the same time? Like, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of generalist versus specialist and all that, but
okay, generalist versus specialist.
Well, it's a little different, but it builds on the same ideas in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately I might need to be overloaded in order to get stuff done, which I don't like. That's something I'd want to improve, but I'm not sure if it's actually doable.
Why is that?
Because I notice when there's not a lot of work, I end up making that not a lot of work feel like a lot of work inevitably. But then when there is a lot of work, it just feels like a lot of work. So either way, I end up feeling super stressed. Yeah.
Wow, that's tough. So have you found ways to combat that in recent years?
Oh. I'm not sure. Maybe one way to combat, it's probably because I'm a procrastinator that this is happening.
Yeah.
So I find that I'm not really stressed about these things when I'm getting them as they arrive. So when I'm trying to get to whatever tasks I have to do as they're coming in, and then I can kind of have everything queued up and start like chipping away at it.
Is that something you feel like you're dealing with right now? With this busy
Definitely. And now I've been trying to, so at the beginning of the semester, I was good about it, even though the beginning of the semester is usually easier. I was like ahead on most of the things I had to do. They were out of the way. But now, and usually this transition happens towards like some middle point of the semester where I start falling behind in a way that makes it so that, okay, I'm no longer chipping away at things. I kind of just have to take the things in chunks.
Okay.
Which isn't a great feeling.
So in chunks like throughout the day or?
In chunks like I'll only be focused on this specific thing with a deadline that's this week.
So for like a weekly time frame? Okay.
And then I'll switch focus to the next thing that's due. It's kind of like you might have a bunch of work. It's kind of like I'm scheduling it earliest deadline first.
I see. With Thanksgiving coming up, is that like how do you think that will help you in terms of like, do you think you try to use that time frame to get ahead of the things that you know are going to be building up, or do you like, what are you excited for? Like, what are your plans for that period?
Well, I'm looking forward to just taking a break.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go home, see my parents, see my girlfriend who lives in she studies at the school that's in the town where my parents live. So
where is that? Is that in Michigan?
No, I'm most recently from
Jersey,
Boston.
right?
Boston.
Oh, Boston.
Yeah.
Because you saw me at the airport, right?
Yes, but that was because of a connecting flight.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's funny because I think you saw me. I didn't even see you.
Yeah.
You told me after the fact. That's hilarious, bro. So you lived in Boston all your life, or in the city, or outskirts? Or?
No, my family just moved to Boston, but like actually in the city, May of I think like last year.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How's life over there?
It's cool. It's a nice city. It's a very cute.
Have you spent a lot of time there? Or you mostly been in Michigan?
Mostly just been in Michigan, but I've had the past 2 summers there, which is fun.
Amazing. So, do you want to spend more time there, explore it? I mean, you're going back there for Thanksgiving, right? Or
yeah. It would be fun to explore it. There's a lot of cool stuff to do. I definitely haven't taken in as much as I should have. So hopefully I'll try and get some more time there.
Cool. So with your senior year almost coming to an end.
Yeah.
It's crazy, no?
It's crazy. It's a little scary. I'm not ready to go.
Have you thought about like your plans for next year yet, or?
Well, I am thinking about trying to do 1-year master's program here.
Oh,
so
yeah, I've
that's.
heard about that. That's what Andrew's doing right now.
I'm not sure what he's doing, to be honest.
Okay.
He's doing some kind of master's program,
Yeah.
and then he's going to take a break before med school. But
Okay.
that's all I know.
Amazing. And do you know like what? So you're currently studying CS. Do you know like, will that just be a building off of CS in your master's, or will you be just doing something specifically? Or
Yeah, it'll probably just be a CS master's,
okay, cool.
and then give me another extra year to do some job hunting.
Yeah. What do you want to do with life? Where are you gonna be 20 years from now?
I want to be a big dog, but who knows? Who knows how possible that is?
What do you define as your big dog? Just
Like running, whether it be running my own company, being the boss of some like whole section of a company, like C level type stuff, or running part of a school, things like that.
What do you mean?
Like running some aspect of a school. So not being like a professor. I mean being in charge of a whole department or something. Like that.
That's interesting. So, in addition to, I think like the C-suite jobs and the starting your own business is pretty popular amongst people, but not a lot of people want to like do something where it's school related in particular. So where does that like desire come from?
I'm not sure, but maybe it's because I've seen it from the people around me. So I've seen some of these roles they get to do where they're actually. So if you're running one of these departments for a school, usually you're trying to bridge the academic and maybe like the business side, because maybe you're in charge of some like AI institute for some school, and you're gonna say, well, okay, AI is very relevant today. There's a lot of academic research for it, but there's also a lot of like R&D in the industry. So, how can we get in touch with that to make something that's actually useful for our students and is also actually useful for us because we're academics and we like to do research.
Yeah.
So it's kind of bridging that gap.
So creating like some kind of generative AI just for research focused thing, or?
It's just like, it's the whole, it's kind of like a whole institute of a school.
Okay.
So, that might be doing some kind of research, which might involve creating some kind of generative AI.
Wow. That's
but
interesting.
It could just be anything.
What do you think AI is going to look like 10 years from now?
Hard to say. Very hard to say. It could get better. It could stagnate. I'm not sure. How do you feel about it?
I don't know. I think it's pretty cool for what it's done.
Mm-hmm.
We've been trying to create some kind of artificial intelligence for so long, and we've had a lot of progress made over the last couple of decades. And from the beginnings of just kind of creating any kind of pattern recognition thing to creating like algorithms that are pretty much AI, and now coming to 2020's era of generative AI. I think it's pretty cool what it's been capable of doing. And honestly, I don't think anyone really knows like where it's going from here. And I think a lot of people are scared about it. There's definitely people in CS are scared about it just because people claim that years from now we'll get so good at writing programs that CS people will be out of business and stuff. Is that a concern you have or no?
I'm not concerned about that at all.
Why is that?
I personally use the tool. It makes some pretty nice code. It can actually do quite a bit, but you still have to do the debugging in the end, and you still need to make this code the type of thing that you'd actually want to push to production.
Right.
Because in real software companies, you can't just make the thing that works and then push it. It needs to be readable. It needs to be maintainable. You need to be able to go back and scale it up if you need. It needs to be scalable too. So there are a lot of things that it probably isn't the best at doing, and the way it writes code is very it's very cookie cutter, but not in the good way, in like the way that you can just tell that it was AI generated.
Well, will it always be that way?
I guess it won't always be that way, so hard to say. But I just have this feeling that there's something about human intelligence that you can't replace when it comes to solving these kinds of problems.
Right.
Could be wrong.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it's far off from human intelligence, but I think it's getting really good at automation and production. And I think right now, if we just look at AI's capabilities right now, the way our relationship with it is that we do all the high level thinking and we leave it to the tedious stuff, which I think is a perfect way to have a relationship with it. Because even like my dad who works on like some CS project, it's more like he does a high level thinking, he does a high level like this has to go here, it has to go here, high level debugging, whatever. But most of the nitty gritty stuff we can give to the AI. I wonder if like sure, AI will always be able to do the nitty-gritty stuff, and maybe right now it's doing like a B- job. Maybe we'll get that even to A+ nitty-gritty stuff. Like it gets really good, but will it ever be able to do high-level thinking?
Oh, I mean, it's already okay. Well, I guess it depends on your definition of high-level thinking, but it already does quite a bit of the high-level thinking for some people, which is also part of my concern.
Like creating structure or like
creating
outlines.
structure. I mean, one of the use cases I tend to think of for it, a classic use case that seems to be abused today, is you give it your prompt for some assignment, it does the whole thing. And that assignment, sure, it might be tedious, right? It might be annoying, it might have some nitty-gritty, but part of learning and part of trying to be better at these things is doing the tedious and the nitty-gritty stuff. Because then it becomes automatic for you, which just makes you a better learner and a better thinker. And I think that these people are using it as a tool, but now it's a replacement for you almost in the way that they try to use it. And so one of the examples I like to think of, which is kind of a silly example, but is very relevant today, is using it to solve like LeetCode problems effectively.
What's LeetCode? Oh, it's at like the website where you can like solve problems, CS-related problems.
Yeah. Very important for interview prep.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And so, you get this coding problem. Figuring out the solution might take some kind of thinking. Now, instead of you doing the thinking, you short circuit it and just say, oh, GPT just threw out some perfectly working code for it. I don't know how it actually does it, but it worked. And then you don't actually go back and learn the method. You just take what it wrote, which is correct, and pasted it.
Right. So it's training us to, I guess it's doing two things. One is like we're not learning the fundamental way it works. We're skipping the tedious stuff, but the tedious stuff is fundamentally important for us to actually lock it in our brain. But also we're also getting incentivized to not do the hard thing.
Yeah.
Take the easy path. And I don't know, do you think people are just being scared over nothing? Like, do you think that, okay, fair enough, we've kind of outsourced some of the work, but I guess when it matters, we lock in and do the work. But I think that is a mindset. I don't know if that is a mindset of a lot of people. I guess that's my mindset of like stuff I already know it's easy or I've done before. Because I guess for us, at least for me, I guess for both of us, it came in the time frame of things where we already have enough educational experience or we picked up a lot of skills already. Mm-hmm. Like for you, you're probably beginning years of college. It came out. And now junior, senior year is probably the most hyped up. And you already kind of went through all the basic coursework where you learned everything. Now for me, like, sure, I've went through basic coursework where I've learned basics of coding. So now I don't feel as guilty. Just like if there's tedious amount of work that needs to get done for a tedious class, I'll just like give it to ChatGPT and let it do it because I know how it works. And if I need to do it, I could probably do it.
Sure.
Is that a bad thing for people in that kind of position? Or do you think even them, like having the benefit of doing tedious work is still good for them?
Well, I think we might need to drill down a little here. What do you mean by tedious work and tedious things?
Let's say you're working on a very simple project like elevators for H183,
okay. Right?
I've read through the spec. I know how everything works. I know it was building function, this other function. And if I wanted to, like, let's say I have to build a function that sorts an array for whatever purpose. And I've done it before. I probably could figure out how to do it if I put like 30 minutes into it or maybe 20, 15. Depends on how difficult the task is. That one probably not as difficult, but let's say I have to read it. Not done in a minute. Let's say I have to read it a little bit. I could probably read it and figure it out, or I could just give it to ChatGPT because I could probably figure it out on my own. Or let's say there's functions that, let's say I've written some of them, but I'm running out of time. I've done enough like practice work for the sake of it. I give the rest of the functions to ChatGPT, but I still understand at a high level how everything works. Is that a bad thing?
Well, I guess it depends on so is that a bad thing? I mean, first, some of these classes say that using GPT is an honor code violation. So there's that. Whether I agree with that being an honor code violation or not isn't my choice. I'm not saying if I agree or disagree. But so there is that aspect of, is it bad? In that case, it would be like objectively bad, I guess, since if you end up getting caught, game over.
Well, I guess your point was that it's bad for learning because you're not learning.
Yeah.
Right. So what about in that regard?
Well, so you might have done the learning and you might have done the high level thinking. So you know how to do this thing, but actually doing it is also important as well. Yeah. So I can do the high level of, like solving a coding problem and say, okay, this is how I'd solve it. But then when I sit down and code it, I start making some mistakes. I'm not writing it up perfectly. So that's something I should want to get better at. And that even if the automation, even if the AI tool can do it for me, it's probably worth me being able to get better at doing that faster because it seems like something that I need to do often. So it's good to automate it, But I should also have the skill to be like, okay, well, I can actually do this. And I know exactly how I do it, and I can do it quickly.
So what about someone who's in a career? Like, let's say they're working, and I think there is a way you can have a good relationship with it, right? Like, do you think that we should not use it at all? Or do you think there's some area where it can be useful? Like, let's say I'm some kind of software engineer somewhere. And I've done CS my whole life, and I know how it works and everything. And I write some of the functions on my own. I need help in some places, so I ask GPT to help come in. Like, do you think that's a bad thing?
I think it's great to use GPT to get rid of your blockers. Sometimes you just have to do it that way.
Right.
And that's probably fine. But it doesn't mean that you are... It might mean you're less capable than you think you are. Because I think there is a bit of an overestimation of, you have a bachelor's in CS, you must be like the GOAT at coding or whatever. I don't think that's meaningful at all. Actually getting the experience to be good at that kind of thing is also important. But I guess it is less important since the AI tool can say, okay, here's the solution.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I can see why it could be bad at like a very, very young level. Where I feel like right now that I'm in college, like I know that the classes that are important are the classes that are not. So I don't feel guilty at all using it for things I would deem unimportant. True. But I could also see like that laziness applied to someone younger in like elementary, middle school to just kind of get away with this. They could probably get away with it in the short term, but then by the time they realize the impact, maybe it's too late. So what about like that circumstance?
Okay. Well, so what kinds of classes do you consider unimportant and why?
Right now?
Yeah.
Well, one class I'm taking is called Digital Futures. Okay. Which is a prerequisite class for LSA. And you basically just like read these articles. It's a race and necessity class. So the teacher kind of throws out random stuff related to media and its impact in whether it's like cultures around the world or current conflicts, and then to write essays about it. Yeah. Let's say that, for example.
So do you think that there's something useful you can get out of that?
Maybe, but not enough that I would invest that many hours a week into it.
I see. And I know this is going to be kind of a silly answer, but there is something valuable about doing the thing that you think is useless and then finding that it has something valuable, something like important in it for you. I've done a lot of things that I think are useless, and then it turns out, oh my gosh, this thing is actually cool and kind of applicable.
I'll give you an example. Like the most recent assignment was to find a campus group on campus, and then you have to first write an essay analyzing how they use Instagram as a method of, I don't know, bringing community together or using it to spread their message or whatever, whatever they're an activist movement or just even a club in general. And then later, the second part of the assignment is like interviewing someone on the team, figuring out their perspective of how they use social media, and then comparing it to what you observed before. Like, what value am I getting from doing that? Even in the realm of just like my goals for life.
Your goals for life. Okay. So I guess this example kind of makes the whole thing look silly. So I get that. But you're now getting a new perspective on how others use social media for a particular goal.
Yeah, but what if I personally just don't care?
Maybe you should care. Social media is a very impactful part of Gen Z.
Okay, but I can't care about everything there is in the world, and there's enough things I'm curious about that I spend a lot of time reading that. So what about, I can't like be curious about everything.
That's true. But having your horizons forcibly expanded can be a good thing.
Okay, I guess so.
It sucks. And that's actually what learning is. Learning is very painful. When I'm trying to learn something new, I'm so terrible at it, and I think it's such a pain that I don't want to do it. And this still hasn't changed. I still react the same way, but I've been trying to forcibly tell myself, okay, this is good for me. Because whenever I've gone through that, I come out the other end and I like have this nice understanding of something new that I didn't have before.
Well, I would say like relatively, like I find learning actually a big theme in my life. Okay. And I would say lesser now, but I've always been into reading books and reading a variety of books and watching podcasts. I still watch a ton of podcasts, all different kinds, and I do this as well. And I find that I'm always curious to just watch a random podcast about anything, like just throwing anything, any topic. I'm always excited to like hear about random topics. I find myself curious about. I mean, obviously, there's like the probably central 3 themes I'm always most curious about, but I'm always excited to hear a podcast about something completely different.
Yeah.
And part of why I like doing this podcast as well is that I get to hear so many different ways people look at life, and that's pretty cool as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to read all kinds of different books, and I do feel like I'm already doing that to a degree. I feel like I'm just kind of coping when I say, oh, but I'm like learning something from this. The emotion I get when I'm working on it, like this is useless. I'd rather just be doing something else right now.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, I feel like I can't justify in my head like writing that essay. And then I understand why GPT could be bad if you're doing that for every single assignment and you're going like playing video games or something, or just wasting your time, or just like doing absolutely nothing, like scrolling your phone or something. I can understand why that could be bad, but if you're using it to automate something that you didn't want to do in the first place, and then doing something that maybe more, still maybe learning or something else,
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like, is that such a bad thing?
I guess it's not that bad of a thing. Trying to think about more of what you're saying. So you're doing something with your time that feels like a waste. You'd rather be doing something else. And you're still trying to learn.
Because I guess the main way I'd steal them in your case is that you're sure you might be learning on your own, but you're not
Mm-hmm.
like stepping outside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
Well,
that was your other
so
point,
there's
right?
part of that. There's part of that. Oh, okay. So I think here's what I was thinking. You might be the exception, not the rule.
Right.
These classes exist to help everyone be at the same kind of level. And a lot of people, like your average Joe, is not at the level that you might be at. So maybe you don't care about how like someone uses Instagram or whatever, because maybe you've already thought about that type of thing. But you might have like 20 other kids in that class that have never thought about that kind of thing and need to like be forced to think about this kind of stuff so that they become a more well-rounded individual. Like there's a class that isn't implemented that well. It's like some senior requirement for CS students that teaches you a little about, okay, you know, basic interviewing techniques that you might have already learned. Maybe some kind of networking, some budgeting, some real life skills I've always heard people say, oh, I wish I learned this in high school, right? Or stuff like that. Now, I've heard a lot of the approach to that type of thing is, oh, this is a useless piece of shit class. This is a waste of my time. Why am I doing this?
Right.
Now, what we're not thinking about then is, are these students who haven't learned about this type of thing? Because I come from a pretty privileged background. So these are the types of things I've already heard about. Or
Like
I've already
interviewing and
learned about.
networking and all that?
Interviewing, networking, budgeting, like how you're actually going to like live life, you know, what kind of loans should you be taking out, stuff like that. Now, thankfully, I've already learned all that stuff. But if I were like a first-gen student, it's possible I hadn't learned about any of that kind of thing. And it's possible I might be graduating and making an amount of money every year that my parents had never even known was possible to make over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps it helps everyone in the end, even if for you it might not be useful. You might be the exception to the rule.
Well, I could see why that class could be useful. I think that skill set is very useful. But who is deciding what's useful and what's not useful?
You decide it for yourself. Who actually decides it for the degree program you're taking? That's whoever's in charge of that.
So if I'm deciding for myself, I can choose what classes I want to put more effort into than others. Like some
Definitely.
people might be in that class and they might find it useless, but I feel like a skill set like that, I think most people know could be kind of useful, like especially like networking related. So I could see that point over there, but
Yeah, they don't talk about networking, but like,
okay,
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, okay, interesting point, interesting, cool. Yeah, what are you gonna lifting tomorrow?
Tomorrow's supposed to be rest day.
Okay,
Maybe I should make up for today, but
Yeah.
I don't
what
think
are you
I
gonna
will
hit
be.
today if you want?
I would have done legs today.
Legs? I'm probably gonna hit legs tomorrow. I did something I haven't done in a while. I did like a whole accessory day today.
Really?
So we did forearms for the first time in a long time, and my forearms are really weak. You ever train forearms?
Yeah, I train forearms pretty
What do
consistently.
you do for forearms?
On my chest and shoulders day, I do the on my leg, normal like wrist curls
Those are
with some
hard.
weight, and then reverse wrist curls.
Yeah, because I thought I was doing them right, but then I realized I'm doing them completely wrong. Because like, I would twist my hand like this.
Oh no!
Yeah, you gotta keep them straight up.
Right.
That shit was hard.
Yeah.
So we did,
it is tough.
Forearms, did some abs, did weighted planks. Those are fun.
Weighted planks.
You ever do them?
No, I have never done them. I don't think I could.
They're actually not as hard as you think, but they're definitely difficult. But they're kind of like fun in a way.
How long were you trying to hold them for?
The first set we did a minute, and then after that, we did I think a minute 30, and then like me and my friends started competing with each other. So we would like just keep pushing as long as we could, and we said that every time we go down and we fail, it's like okay, 10-second rest, go back up, 10-second rest, go back up, and we just kind of kept going until it was like 5 minutes, and it was like everything was hurting after that. That shit was rough.
Damn.
But it was a lot of fun. Definitely. I like training in that way, like just like pushing yourself a lot. You know?
Yeah.
How often do you go a week? I feel like I see you there like some days, don't see you there some days. You go to IM sometimes or?
Yeah, I go 5 days a week, 5 days a week officially.
Yeah.
That's the official plan. And then on Fridays I go to the IM.
Got you. Why do you go to the IM on Fridays? Classes?
That's an agreement that we made with one of our friends who goes to the Stoicism club.
Yeah.
Because she always goes to the IM and never to the bubble. So we like made a compromise. Okay, Fridays we'll go. Andrew and I will go to the IM. Yeah. And then that's it.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you have a specific split you're on or kind of just whatever?
I follow a very strict schedule. So Monday chest shoulders, Tuesday back and buys, Wednesday legs, specifically for Bulgarians, and then Friday upper and Saturday legs again.
What do you mean for specifically Bulgarians?
Well, Wednesday, so the main movement of my Wednesdays is Bulgarians.
With the dumbbells?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that day then I would also do like leg curls, extensions, hip, and then like hyper extensions for my back.
Hip thrusts or?
Hip adduction and abduction.
Oh yeah, those are good.
Yeah.
I mean, I low-key never do them, but I kind of started doing them recently. Like they actually like you feel like a whole different muscle in your legs that you did not know was there. It's low-key kind of hard. Like it's not as hard as like leg press or something, but it's kind of hard to do the movement properly. You know.
Yeah.
That's cool. Bulgarians are. I've probably done them once this whole school year so far. They're tough, bro.
They are a nightmare.
Yeah.
They're just a nightmare.
Yeah, they're definitely fun though. I feel like my forearms kind of go out first, and they're
really.
Yeah.
Dang.
I don't know. I gotta get some wrist wraps. What are your thoughts on wrist wraps?
Totally worked. I use them for RDLs once I get past like a weight that I just can't hold on to anymore. Yeah. So
a lot of people say it's bad for your forearms, which might be true, but I feel like your forearms are always gonna be weaker than your other muscles. So
I mean, I guess it's bad for your forearms, but as long as you have other things that are taking care of them, like if you have dedicated forearm training that you're doing consistently, that's fine.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, if you're still doing other things that use your forearm, even if you don't have the dedicated training, using the straps is okay sometimes. Yeah. Like you have some pull-ups or you do some pull-downs or whatever, or like rows without using the straps, fine. You've done your work.
I see. I mean, I do forearm days like once a year. Forearms are kind of weak, but yeah, I might have to. It was actually kind of fun to hit them today though, because they don't get worked that much. So yeah, I'll probably. I don't see the benefit of doing it because like they're never gonna be that big. So
that's true.
Like mentally, it's just like okay, what's the point of training these muscles?
But then you don't want to have the massive buys and tries and shoulder and then a tiny forearm.
Can you grow your forearms that much? Like
I actually have no idea, but you can make them more like you can make them more vascular.
That's true. I mean, I have pretty low body fat, so
yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, do you think when you're looking at people, do you notice that some people have bigger forearms than others, or something, or?
I think so, but I don't really pay attention to that.
Yeah, because I feel like I would never notice it, unless it's subconscious in a way.
Yeah. In general, I don't really find myself noticing how people are built. To be honest.
Really? You don't even look at like their physique and stuff?
Not that closely. I think it's just never been something that's super important to me.
Wow. That's interesting because I feel like most people, there's something psychological about humans that, I mean, we naturally judge people, right? We'll know nothing about a person. We'll see their hairstyle or we'll see the way they dress or we'll see like their physique and just make so many conclusions about them. Mm-hmm. And it could be a good thing and a bad thing in a way that, I guess the good thing part of it is that it's natural and it's a part of the circuit in your brain that wants to protect us, so he'll try to learn as much as he can about people around us so that we can actually like know information before like we have to put much effort into it. But
Right.
I guess sometimes you can miscalculate, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of people make so much of their judgment on the person based on like how physically big they are, or like the way they carry themselves. And so do you feel like you're like immune to that in a way, or
Do I feel like I'm what?
immune to that in a way?
I don't think I'm immune to that. I definitely do it. I'm sure my lizard brain is doing that.
Yeah.
But I just never noticed it, or never would actually do it as much as others. And I think that's because it's not something I liked. Like I didn't mind it that much, but I didn't really enjoy it. I remember I was going for, I think it was like an interview for like Global Entry, just so I could get my passport checked and stuff. Yeah. And so when I went, and this, I think I was still like a freshman. So this is before I started lifting. So I was still like a fat dude. I was big, but I was like more fat than anything. And the guy said, "Oh, you're a big guy. You're like a football player." I was like, "No." And I'd never really thought about that because I never thought of myself as being all that big.
Wow.
Right? So I mean, I knew I was fat, so I knew I looked like larger than average, but I didn't think of myself as being big. And I think I didn't really like the way that people would do that type of thing. So I tried to stay away from it. It's also just never a way I really thought about life.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting how your brain operates in that way, because I feel like I do it a lot, and I guess I've become more conscious about it. Like, I remember the first time I met you, like, I thought, whoa, this guy's so jacked. Like, this guy's like the bodybuilder of the gym. Like, I thought you might have been a football player too, not gonna lie. And I'd be like, I wouldn't have been surprised. And I just look at the people around you, and you make these conclusions about them. And then I feel like if I think back to my initial reaction of all you guys, it's very different than how I look at you guys now, because you get to know the person, you get to know like who they really are. And I guess the part of you doesn't like the cover judging piece of it.
Yeah, there's definitely that part of me. I've started making those judgments more as I've gotten more into the gym.
Really?
Because I think about it more, because I've noticed my physique change. So now I'm aware of like, oh, these things can change, and now I can make assumptions about, oh, this guy probably like lifts, this dude doesn't, or this girl, whatever, she, whatever. But I don't like that now I'm doing that more. I want to go back to being fully like unaware.
In a way, like, I understand. I guess I want to understand more about the reason why you don't like it. I kind of like it in a way, because I can almost... You're right about the fact that now that you lift, you know that doing these actions get you this result. So people with that result probably did these actions. Mm-hmm. And I think in that way, my brain is able to say, okay, if those people are jacked, then they're probably... I'll probably be better friends with them, and I'd probably have a more inclination to socialize with them. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm happy to socialize with all kinds of people, because what I care most about in my friendships is being driven about anything. It could be the gym. It could also not be the gym. It could be literally about anything. As long as you care about something, I feel like. If you're kind of just like floating around, you don't care about anything. Like, I feel like I don't like that energy in being around this kind of people, but I like people who care very deeply about whatever that might be. And I think that when I see people who might either be physically bigger or jacked, I guess my brain is like, okay, like, that's a better option for someone to social. I mean, that's like the lizard braining. I'm not consciously thinking that, but what I can imagine my lizard brain is doing is like, oh, well, he's probably someone who's also probably driven and also probably enjoys similar interests, and maybe talking to him, I could find better connection there. So I don't find it a totally bad thing, but just out of curiosity, like, what in particular do you think bothers you about that kind of narrative?
I've never fully agreed, and I still do it. I've never fully agreed with judging people based off of their appearance, but in the sense that like you actually let those judgments affect the way you treat others. Okay. And I think people are not as good as doing that as they say they are. Like, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I don't judge people when I meet them," but it's so obvious that the way that they're treating someone is very different than the way they treat others. Like this kind of, I guess you call it like pretty privilege or whatever. An example of this is, because I noticed this since I did like a slight transformation. So there's this group of people that I moved kind of in with, that I'm sort of friends with. I don't hang out with them as much as I should. No, since like sophomore year.
Okay.
And so I met all of them, whatever, at the time. So that was like beginning of sophomore year. So before I actually started lifting. Whatever, all cool, got to meet them. Treated me nicely, blah, blah, blah. And so now we move forward 2 years, and I think I'm calling someone to help them out, like fix some problem that they had setting up their computer with something, because I'm like the IT guy or whatever. and then I hear later that they're asking like, oh my God, what happened to Sammy? You know, he's changed so much. And so I'm trying to see if like subconsciously they're treating me a different way. And it kind of feels like that's what was happening. And I didn't like that. Because
I see that.
I feel like the old me didn't deserve to be treated differently just because he wasn't where he is now.
Okay, at that point I could probably respond to, but I know that a lot of successful people, let's say someone like blows up and they start making like $1 billion a year. Maybe they made some music and they're making $1 billion a year, and all of a sudden everyone's treating them really nicely. Yeah. You know, like they want to be their friend, they want to smile at them, like girls want them, and that's where the fake love starts to come in. Like then a lot of those people describe that they don't have real connections because they don't know like who actually cares about them and who cares about the success they built. So if that's the main point you're driving at, I can understand that, because maybe you're like, okay, well, if they're all treating me nice now, but they weren't treating me nice then, I'm the same person, but they just treating me better because of the success I built. Maybe they want a piece of that, so that's why they're treating me nicely. So I guess the question starts to arise in your brain, like, what is the real reason behind these connections? Is that in particular what bothers you, or not much?
I don't think that's something I'm concerned with, but that's probably because I still don't think that I am, you know, whatever it might be, good looking enough, successful enough, amazing enough for people to want me for that reason. Maybe if I were, or maybe if I were in my own head like that, then maybe I would. And it might be a bad thing that I don't think that, because it's possible that some people are trying to take advantage of me or whatever. But
that's on them.
I'm oblivious of that. I'm oblivious to that. So since I am,
and it's probably not that extreme either. But it's more of a subconscious thing.
Yeah,
if anyone is doing that, but yeah. I think that I want to get back to the point where you feel like your younger self does not deserve to be treated differently than you are now. Because I want to first understand that point before I respond to it, because I feel like I might disagree with that, what I think about certain aspects of my life, but I am curious about if you can like fully like extrapolate that and explain it a little bit more.
So it makes sense to disagree with that, and I was thinking about that. There's kind of like a caveat to it, because it's definitely changed as a person since I started doing these things that are better for my life. So, of course, whatever physical improvements I might have had, certainly had some mental and like discipline improvements that just made me a better person than I was before. But with that said, I think just because I was in a lower state, or whatever you might want to call it, doesn't mean that I should be treated differently now that I'm in a better state. Because, and this is what I found with the real friends who I started going to the gym with, that they actually cared about those things, and they were like, you know, Sammy, you should start going with us. But they didn't push it in a weird way.
Yeah.
It was totally just like, oh yeah, you should start coming because this is something we do, and you could do things with your friends. And I mean, that's really how it took off. And that's the way I think everyone should try to treat each other. Because that way you can have the improvement happen, but you still recognize that this person you should treat equally, no matter whether they actually follow along with it or they're not able to.
So the main problem is that like it's a moral or ethical thing about how people should be treated?
I think so.
Okay. If I'm just thinking about my life, if I was treated nicely when I didn't have anything, I probably would have never done any of this in the first place, and I wouldn't have anything I really have that I'm proud of or happy about now. Because I would say like I'm not like fully satisfied with, there's still things I want, but I'm on a relative scale, like I'm pretty grateful for all the things that I guess I've built in the last 4 years of my life and the person I've become on all different domains, in the gym or socially or with other personal projects. But if I think back to the source, like where it all began, it all came from dissatisfaction. It all came from me realizing that people won't treat you well if you don't have much, but it also drives you to become a better person. I feel like I've probably felt so much negative emotion from how people treated me, a lot of negative emotion. Like people have probably treated me like garbage for years, but I think that now that I look back in retrospect, I'm grateful they did, because I wouldn't have anything now if I didn't.
Would you really not have anything now? Because you mentioned being dissatisfied with how you felt about certain things, and that might have been dissatisfaction, not with how people treat you, but just like with yourself. Because I also felt that kind of dissatisfaction, and it was completely separate from how people treated me. Because a lot of people treated me like generally, nicely, okay. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have anything to complain about.
You're right. There might have. I probably, if I found that dissatisfaction in myself, maybe, I guess we can't go back and change things, so we never know. But I don't think there's anything as potent as someone treating you like shit.
That's true.
And I don't know. I guess there have been. Maybe there's a macro level and the micro level. Like the macro level could be like someone's actually like bullying the fuck out of you. Mm-hmm. That'll obviously drive someone. But even at a micro level, of it's like small subtle things of how like people either like smile at you or look at your way or hold a conversation with you. Those are micro things. And I think I've had a bit of both, like negative macro and negative micro, where I've realized that me starting to fix things has increased the negative micro stuff, where people are more willing to talk to me, more willing to engage with me. And also the macro stuff of like people saying things to your face that are harsh. And maybe I'd have to think about it. Like, where did the dissatisfaction really come from? I guess there's multiple types of dissatisfaction throughout the years about things I was dissatisfied about. Mm-hmm. But sure, maybe I found it on my own. I can't tell you, but I don't think there's anything as potent as someone else coming to your face and like treating you like garbage. Sure, maybe I didn't deserve to feel that way, but I'm kind of glad I did feel that way. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's different for everyone's like experience, but I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I am the same way about the kind of negative treatment, like the pull yourself up by your bootstraps type thinking. I don't know if that's the right way to think, but I still do it.
What type of thinking?
Like the oh yeah, the negative treatment is what drove me to improve. Right. And it works, but I don't know if it's the right way for things to work. And what I mean by that is like, so you were saying that, having the shit bullied out of you, like just bullying the fuck out of someone would have that person be motivated to improve. But there must be some threshold where it just, like their motivation goes away. Because some of these people are driven to pretty much like killing themselves or hurting themselves.
Yes, I'm not saying getting bullied is a good thing.
Oh, no, I know, yeah. I know.
Yeah, that's true. I guess people have different responses to it. Mm-hmm. I guess the response I had is that I want to be better.
Yeah.
I guess some people respond to it and cope more, and then they dig themselves to a hole. But I don't know. You said that, okay, maybe it's a useful thing, but maybe it's not the right thing. But, okay, even if it wasn't the right thing, I guess it's part of life. Like, I guess pain is not a great thing, but it's a part of life, and we can't just saying that it's not the right thing is not going to make it go away. Like it's still a part of life. Like I guess most successful people I've met have gone through the phase of people that are not treating them well. And maybe I'm not saying everyone, I'm not saying 100%, but definitely majority. And I mean, we could debate what's ethical and like what's correct, but we can also look at like I guess what the reality of people's situation is. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's at least what I've seen, but I do understand where you come from though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And the thing I'm trying to think about here is, how do I want to parent my kids?
That's a good question.
I don't want to bully them growing up. I don't think that's useful. But I know that some of the negativity is what helped me. But I don't think that you can get out of like negative land without seeing some light at the end of the tunnel or seeing some kind of hope. Because I imagine, but maybe, you saw something that told you, hey, if I can get out of being treated badly by doing this thing that will make me better. It wasn't just, I need to magically like stop being treated badly. There was a path. So having a path is important.
Right.
And it gives a really hard question for how I'd want to parent. So.
Let's get into that conversation because I agree with you. I don't think imposing, like, sure, I can look back at life and say that those are the things that led to my success. I disagree that I will impose that on kids intentionally, because I personally think that the way life is and the way God's plan works out, it will naturally come into their life through some other force that's not me. Mm-hmm. But I guess that raises the question, okay, assuming that that's set in stone from some other source or place based on whatever life circumstance they go through, like, when you look at parenting your kids, like what do you define as like the ideal job that you can do? And I know it's a big question, and I mean, it's probably something you're thinking about more now. Like you're about to graduate college, and I've started thinking about it a little bit, but it's still a little distant. But I don't know. When you look at yourself as a perfect father, like who is Sami as a perfect father? What would he do?
The perfect father. The perfect father. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I would be the perfect father because and if I model it after my dad, I mean, he's great. He's a great father. He's a great guy. I really like him. And there's a lot I try to learn from him every day. But he was often working a lot, and because he was working so much, there wasn't much time for us, or he'd be out like traveling for work.
There's a family time, you mean? There's less time family time?
There's less time of full family time. So with my dad also being present.
Was your mom working as well, or?
No, thankfully she was able to stay at home and just take care of us the whole time.
Gotcha.
But so I don't know if it would have been different had he not been gone for like months at a time or weeks at a time traveling and then come back, for like a week and then have to go again. But if I model myself after him, well, that means now I'm less present in my kid's life. Even if I still have an impact, through, say, like whoever their mother is, because obviously she and I would hopefully be similar and different. So she would have some of the values that I would try and share with them.
Like your wife?
Yeah. But I don't know who Sami is as the perfect father. That's a very tough question because I don't know what I think perfect parenting is. I don't think it exists.
Yeah, I mean, perfect anything probably doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But I guess you can always strive for it. So, yeah, I think the response, whenever we think about our role as parents, we either respond to, oh, I like what my dad did, so I'll do that, or we say, I don't like what my dad did, so I won't do that. Yeah. So it's like, for example, my father was a firefighter, so I want to be a firefighter, is some people's response. Or some people's response is, my father was a firefighter, so I want to be was it an arsonist?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's either you respond in a positive or a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually one of the two extremes. And you don't have to be exactly what your father does, but you can look at the good and the bad, right? So you probably respect the fact that he works so hard, but you also maybe value time with your kids, right? So do you think that when your interpretation, or at least like current vision, obviously it'll probably change with time and you'll learn more and have more experience, and you'll learn when you actually go and become a father and do the things that fathers do. I guess as of now, like, do you think that the adjustment you make is like look up to your father right now and see the good that he does in terms of his ability to work hard and provide, but also maybe the adjustment you have is that you value time with your family more?
Maybe, but I'm not sure how much I'd make that adjustment because I think if he hadn't been so obsessed with working as hard as he could and being as like amazing as he could, then I don't think I would have had the type of privilege that I have today, which is a very, very challenging trade-off. And I think it's a trade-off. I don't think you can have all of both. I think it's like you push more one direction, that gives you more in another aspect, and then less in a different aspect. So I don't think it's something you can have both of, which is like concerning.
Yeah. What about other aspects of fatherhood? So we have, I think another big question that comes up a lot is that how controlling do you want to be as a father? Because some fathers believe that the best way to do it is to put a lot of restriction on their kids and set rules up and do this like X, Y, Z. And some parents are just completely carefree. And obviously, I'm not asking a binary question, choose A or B, but we're on the spectrum of things. Like, where do you find yourself?
There's some amount of restriction I think I will impose. But so there are the safety requirements. So there are some safety requirements. Okay, like let's say my son or daughter, wants to go have a sleepover with one of his friends. Right? Okay, well, are the parents weirdos? Right? Are the siblings of the potential friend weirdos? And then that's probably the extent of what I can do. Like the extent of what I can do is verify, okay, are these people weird? Is he going to be in a safe environment, or is he or she going to be in a safe environment? At that point, okay, I just got to trust that they'll be okay. It's an important part. Like letting go is an important part, even a little at a time. So there's that. The safety aspects I will try to compromise on as little as possible, but you have to take some risks sometimes. And if he comes back and like that was a scarring experience for the kid, well, we'll have to go from there. And these things happen sometimes, and they suck.
Right.
So there's some safety, and then there's some. So a restriction that was put on me was that I couldn't like do fun things like, you know, for example, gaming or something, unless it was either a no school day or the day before a no school day. So effectively like a Friday or the weekend. That is something I'm glad I had because it forced me to control myself, but also not that glad I had because then I didn't learn how to do the time management once I had this kind of freedom to not have to deal with those rules.
Okay. Interesting.
So there are things I liked, and in the end they worked, but maybe they would have worked better a different way.
Right. Interesting. So did you find that because of that restriction, did you find it difficult coming into freshman year when you had the freedom for the first time?
Yes and no. I think the freedom gave me a lot of possibilities and taught me a lot of cool lessons. and with this freedom, okay. So let me actually reset here. So the freedom. So the question is, right, like, did this freedom make it hard for me to figure out the right balance? I think because I had experience with having this kind of rule, it wasn't that difficult to readjust and say, okay, well, this is how I should control myself. Now, because the rule wasn't in place and there's no one there to enforce it, I had my moments of like, oh, you know, I have all this free time, let me make use of it. When it wasn't really free time, it was probably time I should have been doing some work. But the work was getting done, so I guess it's okay. It's hard to have a definitive answer here. I think it helped me in high school in the sense that I wasn't out of control in high school, which made me a little more disciplined because I wouldn't have been able to get all the things done that I did in high school if I hadn't. But I don't know if in the long run it helped or hurt because thankfully by then I'd learned the skills I needed to figure out how to monitor things myself.
I see. Interesting. So going back to parenthood, the main concern that you have is safety. That's the main restriction, and in addition to this other one that we just mentioned. That's but your main like concern is safety.
There's the safety concern and also like the academic capability and discipline. I think I value the academic stuff too. Yeah, cool. What about in controlling like what it is that they pursue? Oh, wow. This one's interesting to think about because I've never thought about how my dad really applied a very specific policy for this. Yeah. That I ended up following, of course. But so he said, you can do whatever you want, but you have to do engineering as well. Oh, wow. Okay. So I was pretty much on the cusp of doing music in college. Yeah, I read about it. It was crazy. Yeah, so like saxophone performance and probably education too. Or like saxophone performance and like jazz studies with it. And he was completely supportive of that. He was like, yeah, I will totally support you in doing that. But you would have to do engineering as well. So I would have had to do the like dual degree or something like that. Now, that didn't hold me back from doing it. But I realized in like senior year that even though I was pretty good, at senior year of high school, even though I was like pretty good and I was setting on my apps and I was hearing back from like the screening recordings, I think COVID killed me, and I realized like, okay, well, I don't think this is something I actually want to do because this is something I've been asked. I've been asked by these different teachers and profs, is this something you actually want to take seriously and you would want to dedicate like multiple hours a day to? And I realized, you know what, like probably not. I would. It would be fun. It would be cool. But I don't think I like it that much, even if I really love it. So based on that, you made a decision to not pursue? Yeah. Oh. I think Christian is doing a double major, right? I think he's doing the full dual degree. Is he in LSA though? I can't remember. Okay, because I think data science is LSA. So. I think there's also data science engineering. Oh, really? Oh, then dual degree would be a lot. I'm about to talk to him about that. Wow. Definitely. Did you ever talk to him about like how it is for him? I've heard some like ideas of how it is. He can't get as much practice as the pure music majors can, just because there's so much work to do.
Yeah.
Which may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing. Who knows? And of course, because then he spends all this time preparing and performing and doing whatever else, that probably gives him less time to focus on like the data science, the engineering, the EECS classes he has to take, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like it's hard to balance, but I guess it can be done. And that goes back to it being overloaded actually helps you end up doing better or just as well as you would have.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right, Sammy. It's a pleasure talking to you today. A lot of fun.
Pleasure chatting with you as usual.
Explored from fatherhood to CS to lifting, but plenty of fun. What's your plan for the rest of the day?
Well, there's a project due Monday that's still needs to be worked on, so that will be the rest of the day.
Great. I'm excited for that. Thank you for coming on, and have a good one.
Yeah, thanks for letting me chat.
Thank you for tuning in to my episode. If you enjoyed that episode, I guarantee that you'll love this episode right here. The best way to support the channel is by hitting the subscribe button. It'll help me to upgrade the channel, get better guests, better production, and overall more episodes for you. And by hitting the subscribe button, it'll ensure that you'll never miss a new release. While you're at it, hit the like button, leave a comment, and share the link with your best friend. Thank you once again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.